Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager number 311H hospital latch. This video will be on a 5-inch backset version of the lock in a 26D or a satin chrome finish. This video will serve as a visual overview of the parts, dimensional overview. We'll go over the product catalog, the installation instructions, different availabilities and options of the hardware itself. And let's begin by actually touring the contents of the box and doing a visual review of what's included. Okay, a hospital latch is, literally used in its namesake in a hospital or healthcare type environment. And what makes the hospital latch something useful, important, or valuable is the fact that by virtue of the shape of the handles themselves, you don't need your hand to operate the lock. In essence, this is what we're looking at. Okay, a long paddle-shaped type handle that I will be able to use with my arm, my forearm. I'll be able to get my hand underneath it and pull it this way. Why? Well, I'm about to enter a patient's space, and I've just sterilized the hands. So being able to use other parts of the body is what is important. Obviously, having gloves on your hands and not touching the handle is really what the point is of a hospital latch. Very typical, very common. I don't see them in other applications other than hospital healthcare scenarios. I could understand why they might be appropriate for other applications where you might be carrying something and need to be able to push on the handle, on the paddle. But in those environments is really where you're going to exclusively see this equipment. Let's take a look at some paperwork. The point being is that it will allow us to understand the parts that are included. So we'll just pull these out so that we can call attention to them as we come across them. You're going to have obviously your interior and exterior trim. Okay. This is a 5-inch backset, and that dimension is the reference from the edge of the door to the center of the preparation for the hospital latch. Okay, these hospital latches are historically available in 2 3/4, certainly 5-inch, maybe 3 3/4 as well. We're going to discover if Hager offers that. The backset dimension, and what's nice about this is that the latch faceplate floats. That's by design. If you're doing a square edge door, great. If you're doing a beveled edge door, great. It'll work either way. If you're measuring an existing prep, you can put your tape measure on either side of the door and you're going to get to 5-inch. Backset is actually defined from if the door is beveled, from the center of the thickness of the door back to the hole preparation, not from the small side or from the large side, but from the center. If it's a square edge door, it doesn't matter. The point being is, you need to specify the backset that you're dealing with. Why is 5-inch a common backset? Well, what 5-inch does is that it serves to get the hardware substantially further away from the edge of the door, making that available space in which you can operate the handle larger. Okay. If you've got a 2 3/4 backset, your handle is going to be really over here. It's pretty close to the frame. Moving it over to 5-inch is certainly considered typical and common. This lock is including both a 4 7/8 and a 2 3/4 strike. We're going to have a series of fasteners, obviously to bolt the chassis together. Your trim will, and this is a really easy unit to install, your chassis will go onto the door, and then bolt to each other. Your trim plates or your scalp plates will then bolt over that and secure to the chassis themselves. A couple of screws, obviously, for the latch front. Okay, the latch front. Then we're going to have probably screws for the strike, which are indeed included with the strikes themselves. Okay, so you get all of the parts that are necessary. All right, let's see what kind of paperwork Hager has in the box for us to review. Now, the paperwork that comes in the box is going to be the template and installation instructions, and quite frankly, of the 4 pages that are technically here, one of them is blank, so that leaves 3 pages, and really you only need half of 1 page to install this equipment. The point of that being is it's really simple and straightforward to install it. The operation of this unit is simple, reliable, predictable, dependable. It's fully reversible. Not that you would need to change the operation of a paddle, but you could. The way that the business end of this comes from the factory. Right now, obviously, we're in the pull side, so we're probably on the interior of the patient room, right? To pull that forward, we get that rotation out of the spindle, which is what I keep putting it back to 0, because that's what causes the latch to actually operate. So as I pull the paddle towards me, it retracts the latch. Okay, I can't push this paddle because this is the pull side. I could, if you study the feature here and here, and these roll pins that will hit the shoulders, if I were to remove this C-clip and pull that pin out and flip the chassis over, well, now the shoulder is going to be up here, so now that I would only then be able to push. The other one is built exactly that way, where this chassis is simply reversed. It's completely modular in that regard. They're building so many push sides, so many pull sides. 50% push, 50% pull. So it's very simple, straightforward, and even elegant in that regard. 5-inch, just to study this. The length of the latch bolt from the edge of the faceplate to the center of where the spindles go in, that's your 5-inch dimension. Okay, now let's look at the installation instructions, and what I really like about what Hager has done here is they're defining for us the orientation of the paddles. You can install these either which way you like, any way that you prefer. We generally will see them handles down in both orientations. I see them handles down. I see them horizontal as well. But of course, these inverted ways are very typical and common as well. The point of the matter is, using the equipment in the box, you get to decide how this is going to be installed. It's just that simple. Now, the parts diagram is important because as soon as you get the equipment, what's your obligation? Well, I think your obligation is to make sure before you start drilling holes and pulling locks on and off doors, that do you have everything? You don't want to get a surprise after you've taken all your tools out and spent an hour to realize, now, it doesn't happen, but it could. It could have been lost, that you're missing the fasteners to bolt everything together. So as we look at the parts diagram, we know that we do have the 2 covers and the paddles and the chassis assembly. We know that we have the latch bolt, the screws for the latch bolt, then both strike plates. We've already gone over that. The only thing we've not gone over really are the 2 screws, part number 2, that hold the scalp plates on. I removed those screws to get to the inside of this. I do have to tell you that there are a couple of manufacturers who really seem to put their screws on excessively tight. Be incredibly mindful not to strip that screw out when you're removing those screws. What I'm saying is, these screws that are in the side here, it's imperceptible, but the belly of this is pinched in ever so slightly. So there's a substantial amount of outward pressure on those screws that needs to be kind of relieved. You've got to have a very positive fitting screwdriver in here in order to get that out. Plus, you might need to put it down onto a surface and exert a lot of your own weight onto the unit and make sure that you don't strip it out. It's an 832 thread. Is what it is. I believe that's what it is. I know it's not 1032. So let's continue on with a review here. So what we do now is we move on to we've talked about the different configurations. Have what you'd like. It's really going to be a matter of turning something over on its end and flipping stuff, obviously, door to side to side. Horizontal is going to be super easy. We've confirmed we have all the parts. Now, moving to page 2 and half and a third of page 3, it really just talks about installing the material. You've got a almost cardstock thickness paper template, simple and straightforward. It's going to require a 2 1/8 inch hole. The latch bolt itself is going to be 2 1/4 by 1.1 inches. Okay, so with the exception of the 4 through bolt holes, you've got a standard hole. I'm not going to say 161. 161 means 2 3/4 back set, but you've got a 2 1/8 inch hole, 2 1/4 by 1.1 inches in the edge. You've got a 1 inch bore in the edge of the door all the way to the cross bore. The back set as necessary, and when we get to the product catalog, we'll figure out if there are only 2 back sets. I don't know if Hager has a 3 3/4, which is very common in push-pull latches. How are you going to go about drilling for this? You know, generally what will happen is I would generally just do, with this template, I don't have a 5-inch back set to where I can fold this over, basically tape the template to the door, and then take my center punch and mark all the holes. Okay, I would do it that way. I would certainly do it that way. Another way I might do it, I might just take my caliper and measure, because this is a full-size template. I might take my caliper and measure everything off of the center line and then mark my door manually. I might just make a template. I'll tell you, if I was going to do more than a couple of these, I would get a piece of 1 by poplar. I would drill all of my holes into it. It would at least give me the point to where I could mark everything. Might make a very small hole. I might be able to take a nail set or a center punch and mark my holes. I might also get fancy. If I was going to do a lot of them, I would probably make a very robust template where I was getting bushings and I was inserting it down into the material itself for my 5/16 holes for my through bolts. The advantage of the template is I could make it so that I flush it to the edge of the door and I know my back set is accurate. I don't have to measure. Clamp that to the door. I might even get really lazy and take a piece of 1 by material and flush it off to the, make it 42 inches tall or whatever it needs to be, and then clamp that whole thing onto the bottom corner of the door, clamp it down, and now I know I'm good from the edge and I'm good from the bottom of the door up. You obviously have to be mindful of undercuts on doors, but if you have a consistent undercut, it doesn't matter if your doors are 6'8", 7'0", 8'0", 9'0", 100 foot tall, okay? If you've got a consistent undercut. That would be a neat way to do it as well. Now, I guess if we're talking about making templates, you do have to be mindful of how a back set is determined, and I had mentioned it earlier, but just to be clear, if that is the 2 1/8 inch crossbore, back set is determined from the center of the door, if it's a bevel door, to the center. The reason that definition is so good is because we no longer care the thickness of the door. It's from the center of that. The rule is that bevel is 3 degree, also known as 1/8 in 2. So for every 2 inches in door thickness, that skew is 1/8 of an inch. So the distance from here down to here, measured from the 90 degree, is going to be almost 1/8 of an inch on an 1 3/4 thick door. If you're going to make your template, be mindful of how are you going to make that template. You're going to have to skew or bias everything based on the side of the door that you're clamping it onto if it's a beveled edge door, which it is very likely going to be. Hospital, wood doors, beveled edges. And then you'll have to skew that slightly. You're going to play with it 1/16 of an inch, and then always do it from the, well, probably what you're going to need is a mark on the edge of your template that will have your skew on the small side. Flip it over, flip your template over, then on the big side as well, is whatever, you know. Anyway, I'm obviously overthinking it. And if you're ordering these doors from the factory, they're going to do all the work with their CNC router, so life will be very good and easy. But the template is very simple and straightforward in that regard. I suppose, like me, you can overcomplicate it to whatever degree you'd like. Now, let's move forward with looking at the strike preparation information. Now, if you have a hollow metal frame or you've got a prepped wood frame, you know, installing the strike is probably going to be nothing you'll have to contend with. Marking the outline of the strike, assuming you've got a wood frame and you need to mortise it, the important thing is to make sure is that you're drilling the center line of the strike itself as the same center line of the latch bolts coming out of the edge of the door, which means you're going to need to determine where is the center line of that latch bolt. 1 7/8 thick door, 15/16 of an inch. When you have the door closed, how much room is there from the face of the door to the face of the stop? You know, you can then start to figure out, okay, I know from the face of the stop to the center line of my door, I now know the center line of my strike because it will be the center line of these screws. How far that dimension is from here to the backside. How far of a backset from the face of the stop do you need to leave? And then you can position that laterally in the frame accordingly. So long as you go about achieving a vertical center line of the door in the closed position and the center line of the strike, which again is the center line of these screws, because that's how strikes are defined. Like a lip length, that's defined from the edge of the lip, but from the center line of the holes, okay, to the edge of the lip. This is probably just a typical 1 5/16, something in that range. So we won't go into further detail really about that. Step 9 is position the cams, and really what that means is when you saw that I earlier placed this all together, I just put it together. And then what did I do? Well, I pulled my lever up. Okay, well that works fine. So I know that my cam is in the right position. Let's just say I had it in this position. I rotate my lever up. Well, it doesn't work right. Okay, nothing's happening. Okay, check your cam position. Rotate it in some other orientation and see what's going on. Okay, that doesn't work either. So you continue to rotate the cams until you get it into the correct position. Okay, and when you study, as I rotate the cam, and it's shown on the installation instructions, when you study where this is, and then you push the lever, the paddle in, pardon me, in this case you pull it out, you can see that you rotate that cam. The bottom line is what returns the plug, the spindle back to the proper orientation is what will bring it back is the spring inside of here. Okay, so that's how that's going to work. Simply test it before you attach everything, and you'll know that it's going to work. They do detail what that's going to look like right down here, give you an idea of what it's supposed to look like. At that point, you'll move to step 10, install push handle assembly onto door by inserting camshaft into square hole of spring latch. Your latch bolt's already installed. Be sure to pre-drill those holes. You don't want to split your oak edge door. Pre-drill those. Insert 4 number 10 screws through the push handle mounting, which is probably going to be the exterior side. So you've got your push side on, run your 4 bolts through, they'll be projecting through the other side. You're going to need to have those star washers and those nuts ready to go as you bring the next side of the trim. Once you've got the cam plug set correctly and inserted into the latch bolt hub, retracting hub, and then throw the nuts on there and just test everything. Leave it loose, pinch it together if you can, and test to make sure it works. Step C, install push handle assembly on the other side of the door, mating the pull handle cam with the square hole in the latch. Insert 4 number 10 screws through the pull handle mounting bracket. We're just duplicating. Install washers and nuts. Do not tighten them down completely at this time because you're going to test the operation. Check that both handles will independently retract the latch bolt. Use a wrench to tighten the nuts down so that the 2 assemblies are tight to the door. test the operation before you call it a day to make sure it all works smooth. The latch retracts and it projects back automatically. Finally, you'll install the covers. That's easily done by and then the two 832 flat undercut head screws will simply go into those openings, and your installation at that point will be considered, in fact, quite complete. Now, let's take a look and exhaust the links down below this video, and we'll see what else Hager has in store for us on this product. Okay, now to bring this video to conclusion, we're looking at the links that are down below. Template, going to click through these. That's obviously the same document that is included with the hardware. Installation, that's going to be the same document included with the hardware. The third link is metal door prep. Okay, that's a nice technical drawing showing what a metal door preparation would indeed look like. They do somewhat elegantly point out where the bevel is referenced to the center line. Wood door prep, nice, same drawing as well. Those are nice. Those are just nice drawings to have. Then finally, product catalog, and that's going to show us the 311H along with its sister product, the 311L. You're going to need the 311L is only going to be a piece of equipment that you would use on a lead line door, and hospital applications, of course, are going to see the lead-lined doors, lead-lined walls, drywall, etc. Very commonly. Hardware, of course, to go along with that would be appropriate, and they're literally going to modify this hardware so as to maintain the integrity of the leaded shielding through the entire door. You go drilling holes through it, you're compromising that integrity. Well, adding the proper lead-lined door, lead-lined hardware to your lead-lined door is how that will work. The specifications in the cut sheet are the same things that we have listed down below. They give a bunch of dimensional properties. Let's take a close look at some of those dimensional properties. Push and pull levers, 1 5/16 by 4.5. Pardon me, 1 15/16, closer to about 1 7/8. Overall height, about 4.5 to the, really to the axis of where that's going to rotate off of. Projection, 2 5/8. Yeah, overall projection would put you right at about 2 5/8. Okay. Down through that list, they have a bolt throw of 1/2 inch. Yeah, indeed. This is a UL labeled product. That's where your labeling is. This is appropriate. This is compliant for use on fire-rated doors, provided that your provided that the label on your door does not indicate minimum latch throw of something beyond 1/2 inch. Okay, be mindful of that. Bolt diameter at 3/4. That's going to be probably the bolt itself, I suppose, or maybe it's a reference to the bolt diameter. Let's take a look at that. Okay, looking at our bolt diameter of 3/4 inch. If I take a look at our height of our bolt itself, 3/4 inch, you'll notice that this is a spring latch. This is in essence a passage function, correct? So there'd be no concept of a deadlocking latch on this at all. They might make keyed versions of push-pull latches. Well, in fact, no, I know they do. I don't believe Hager does, but other people do. Projection, bolt throw, bolt diameter, back set 2 3/4 or 5 inch. No 3 3/4. Those are your two choices. 5 inch very common. 3 3/4 uncommon, not unheard of, but certainly we sell 2 3/4 probably the most, because that's going to fit stock door sizes, I would think. 5 inch, and then finally 3 3/4, a distant second. You've got your 4 7/8 strike. You have your 2 3/4 T strike. That's 4 7/8 tall, typical hollow metal prep. That's 2 3/4 tall. We call it a T-strike if you use your imagination. You can see why we call it that. Made of zinc and stainless base materials. This client ordered 626, which would tell me brass base material. Oh, actually, no, forgive me. This is 26D. This is 26D. That means satin chrome. That does not indicate definitively what the base material is at all. It could be, technically, it could be anything. This is a 26D finish. I very much... Well, I don't know the base material of the cover. And given the fact that it is so completely non-magnetic, I'm tempted to say that it could be zinc, but it could also be brass. I don't know the base material of this cover. I don't believe it's stainless, because stainless would have a little bit of magnetism to it. That's going to be steel, zinc dichromate. That handle is non-ferrous based as well. That could be zinc. Heavy, dense, will take a nice finish. These are non-handed, absolutely. You can just switch them handles around, manipulate the spindles or the hubs so that they work accordingly. Engraving is possible on these as well. Having them engraved push or engraved pull, very typical and common that you're going to see that sort of engraving done. The rest of that product catalog goes through some other somewhat non-related or unrelated products to the Hager item that we're looking at. And that wraps it up. There is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Hager products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Any questions on the Hager? This is their part number 311H in a 5-inch backset hospital push and pull latch, or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.